Well, hello. It feels like it's been a while since we were together here at Poetry P. Did you enjoy heading off to the future with Alex and the terrific Indian poets that Triveni Haikai India put us in touch with last week? I found their work quite inspirational. Did you? I should put together some work from some of the oldest Haijin in town, and we can see the difference over the ages. Perhaps I'll get that organised next year. If you are one of the oldest Haijin in town, get in touch. In the meantime, if you are a haiku poet under 40 living outside the US or India, why not also get in touch if you fancy showcasing some of your Japanese short form work next year? Now, in case you were wondering, and you're new here, I'm Patricia, the usual host of the Poetry Pcast, and this week we're going to hear more original senryu written especially for you, and which will be in the next journal, out imminently. That's Journal 524. And if you're an ISA or a Buson member, it'll be winging its way into your email box as part of the benefits of your membership. If not, you'll be able to purchase it via Buy Me a Coffee. Everyone on the mailing list will receive notification of its publication, so if you're not on the mailing, do sign up on the website. Otherwise, you're waiting for me to remember to mention it on the podcast. So this week, I'm going to change things around, mainly because of a few events that are going on in my life. I will have guests, don't you worry, and they will tell us who the nominations are for the judge's choice. But we'll meet all of them at the end. In the meantime, my thanks to all the editing team who read the poems this time. That's Leah Maguire, Robert Horrobin, Ron Craig, Vandana Parashar, Lev Hart, and Matt Diffie-Bell. Actually, Matt will be along later, and he can correct the pronunciation of his name again. Honestly, my old brain is not what it once was, and hasn't fully recovered from the bash I gave it on my bike accident. Thank you to everyone who sent me good wishes. I'm nearly back to normal, but I do have a bit of a cold, which you might hear in my pronunciation this time. My apologies. In this submission period, I encouraged you to really get to grips with things that were frustrating you when writing your senryu. And you know what? I think you're much nicer people than me. I'd have been much more nasty. So shall we hear some scenarios from your frustrations? Oh, and a little word of warning. There are some poems on tricky subjects in this episode. Info session on autism. A father shows off his lack of empathy. Info session on autism. A father shows off his lack of empathy. Adele Evershed. Quiet carriage. I turn down her volume with a stare. Quiet carriage. I turn down her volume with a stare. Anne Smith. I am totally in admiration of Anne and will be developing said stare forthwith. Electric bill. The thermostat set at 2 sweaters. Electric bill. The thermostat set at 2 sweaters. Christine Wenk Harrison. Do you know, I totally feel the cold. I've just got back from Ireland. I've never been there in the autumn before and didn't quite know what to expect. My home place is in the northwest, and I spent my time crisscrossing counties Leitrim and Sligo. The weather, because as you know, I never knowingly let an opportunity go by without a weather report, the weather was surprisingly sunny, and I woke up every morning to a beautiful dawn and lots of lovely sheep outside the window. But it was chilly, and I could have done with a few coats off the back of those sheep. Forgive me for plagiarizing your poem, Christine. Electric bill. The thermostat set at 2 U's. Or, as my family might say, electric bill. The thermostat set at 2 Yo's. Autumn memories. So many leaves, not enough bags. Autumn memories. So many leaves, not enough bags. Anthony Lusardi. A cheeky couple cuts in the queue. The Inferno's 10th circle. A cheeky couple cuts in the queue. The Inferno's 10th circle. Anne Sullivan. That's what I miss about not having the kids at home. If there are enough of you, you can fan out and make sure this doesn't happen. Doctor visits. 5 specialists for 1 sick body. Doctor visits. 5 specialists for 1 sick body. Krista Pandy. Another cold call. Still not getting past the doctor's secretary. Another cold call. Still not getting past the doctor's secretary. Tracy Davidson. Borderline test results. All the divides within me. Borderline test results. All the divides within me. Alison Whipple. Toilet waterfall. Not quite the honeymoon we'd pictured. Toilet waterfall. Not quite the honeymoon we'd pictured. Kurt Paulish. Ah, but those memories are what makes the occasion, aren't they? My husband and I had a great party after our wedding, and we were rather the worse for wear. Much dancing and a fair bit of booze. There was a tease made in our hotel bedroom, and my husband is a great one for gadgets, and decided he'd set it to wake us up with a cuppa in the morning. Our wedded bliss did not get off to the greatest start when in the early hours of the morning, heralded by many explosive sounds, our cuppas did indeed arrive. As Kurt would say, not quite the honeymoon we'd pictured. Getting too full of himself. Time to deflate. Getting too full of himself. Time to deflate. Ivanka Ettinger. Dog days. Sweating the smallest stuff. Dog days. Sweating the smallest stuff. Cynthia Anderson. No one to blame but myself. Self-employment. No one to blame but myself. Self-employment. Debbie Olson. Priority seat. A man-spreading youth ignores my walking stick. Priority seat. A man-spreading youth ignores my walking stick. Jenny Shepherd. Presidential debates. Poking potatoes with a fork. Presidential debates. Poking potatoes with a fork. Colette Kern. The sounds of the K's and the T's in that poem really add something, don't they? Overwhelmed by credit card debt. Cherry Blossoms. Overwhelmed by credit card debt. Cherry Blossoms. Joshua St. Clair. Another cracked tooth. breaking my budget. Another cracked tooth, breaking my budget. Kim Clue. Kim, I definitely feel your pain. I'm currently putting off having a wisdom tooth removed. That's going to cost a small fortune. Haiku critic. My cockatiel whistles over the podcast. Haiku critic. My cockatiel whistles over the podcast. Kimberly Kuchar. How very dare he, Kimberly. How very dare he. Bad timing. Whenever I am late, the boss is early. Bad timing. Whenever I am late, the boss is early. Minal Sarosh. Cat's whiskers. The space between haiku and senryu. Cat's whiskers. The space between haiku and senryu. Sandeep Chauhan. Paris Green. The syllables of a haiku. Fewer and fewer. Paris Green. The syllables of a haiku. Fewer and fewer. Marcia Moldovan. I think Marcia may have just given us a topic for next year. Do you remember that Mark Gilbert came along in Series 4, Episode 17, to talk to us about long haiku? It was quite fashionable to write minimal haiku for such a long time, and I don't think we've come out of that period yet. Not totally. So Mark and I looked at some of the longer haiku in the canon. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to go and have a listen to that again. And then, of course, you can listen to some of the poems that you wrote in response to that. It's in episode 22 of that series. Anyway, long story short, perhaps we should have a think about the length of haiku again. Looking perhaps neither at the long or the short of them, but at haiku that have used just the right amount of words in this succinct form. If you've got any examples that you think fit the bill, send them to me. Thank you. Ripped photo. I keep the half where I'm smiling. Ripped photo. I keep the half where I'm smiling. Nalini Shetty. Old sticky note. Still stuck in the past. Old sticky note. Still stuck in the past. Nitu Yumnam. Next, I have a very clever one, a cleverer allusion that you'll almost certainly figure out. Have a listen. Old vase. The dog jumps up. Sound of water. Old vase. The dog jumps up. Sound of water. Paul Chapman. Braid from a magazine. All three hands on deck. Braid from a magazine. All three hands on deck. Randy Brooks. Randy, I now turn to YouTube for such things, and the other day I was trying to figure out how to replace a battery in something. I had, of course, lost the instructions, and it was a little bit complicated. Sometimes gadgets really make it fiddly to replace batteries. Anyway, now I need to look up how to give myself a nail treatment. I broke a nail, and it will need quite a bit of repair. It's a right mess. Smarting. The lingering sting of her tongue. Smarting. The lingering sting of her tongue. Paul Callous. Settlement. Her words, not mine. Settlement. Her words, not mine. Jacob Blumner. Low tide. All we find is plastic. Low tide. All we find is plastic. Pam Joy. Open mic. I forget some words to come together. Open mic. I forget some words to come together. Richard Tice. Elvis the pelvis, and then a hearing aid. Elvis the pelvis, and then a hearing aid. Robert Whitmer. No longer itching for your touch. Shingles. No longer itching for your touch. Shingles. Scott Wigerman. Middle of nowhere. A poop bag on a bush. Middle of nowhere. A poop bag on a bush. Tony Williams. That's one of my bugbears too, Tony. The life of a zombie. Chemotherapy. The life of a zombie. Chemotherapy. Valentina Rinaldi Adams. Girls' road trip. The desert blossoms with mansplainers. Girls' road trip. The desert blossoms with mansplainers. Louise Hopewell. Stormwatcher. She seeks cover from his mood. Stormwatcher. She seeks cover from his mood. Jan Stretch. The child carries her cross each day till she says no. The child carries her cross each day till she says no. Nina Singh. And now we're going to find out which of the poems were nominated by the judges for the judges' choice. And the first nomination is from Alvin Cruz. He wasn't able to join us for the recording. Just the time zones were too difficult this time. Sorry about that, Alvin, but thank you very much for giving us your nomination. And so he nominated this one. Faint echoes cling to the alley walls. Her rape plea. Faint echoes cling to the alley walls. Her rape plea. C.X. Turner. And he said this. I've chosen this Senryu by C.X. Turner. It stands out to me for its evocative imagery. The first line invites me to pay close attention, to listen carefully as if something big is going to be revealed. Those faint echoes must be heard before they completely fade into oblivion. The reader is made to wonder, faint echoes of what? Are they the cries of an animal in the forest, or the gentle whispers of the wind? Could they be the echoes of a human voice, an inner voice? As the reader gets to the second line, the context or setting of the scenario becomes clear, an alley. We all know that an alley is a narrow pathway behind or between buildings, often where trash bins and other unsightly things can be seen. Finally, in the third line, a poignant story is told. The reader sees the whole picture, yet it leaves so many things unsaid. If only walls could speak, then maybe her cry for help would have been heard. If anything, this scenario invites us to listen to the many crying voices around us. In this sense, C.X. Turner's poem is something no one can pretend not to hear. Thanks, Alvin. And then this one was nominated by Catherine E. Winnock. Also had a problem. This time it was the lurgy. She's coughing and spluttering, much like me. Although, thankfully, I turned off the sound when I was doing the coughing and spluttering. On thin ice, politicians who deny climate change. On thin ice, politicians who deny climate change. Melissa Dennison. There is both a sense of irony and satirical humour here within this scenario, capturing a strong message using minimal words on a contemporary topic. The brevity of the form reflects the urgency of the situation, emphasising how little time is left to act. The first line, on thin ice, serves as both a literal reminder of melting ice due to climate change and a metaphorical warning to those in power, suggesting their recklessness will lead to consequences. As a scenario, the second line, politicians who deny, becomes the focal point, summarising the denial of climate change. It implies responsibility and a failure of leadership, that the politicians' denial places them and everyone else in danger. The final line, climate change, anchors the poem, and there is a sense of culmination here, as if everything leads back to this issue. To summarise, this piece effectively uses social commentary, highlighting the dangers of political inaction. It fits well into the scenario tradition by focusing on human behaviour with a concise, critical tone. Thank you, Catherine. And next we're going to hear from Lynn Jambor, who has chosen a poem by Anne Fox. Happily, she's here to talk us through her analysis. Lynn, wonderful to have you back. You're almost a regular here. Thank you for coming.
I am very honored, as you know, Patricia, and particularly excited about this poem that I chose. Automated cashier, her have a nice day, not quite sincere. Automated cashier, her have a nice day, not quite sincere. I chose this poem because every time I reread it, another layer became apparent. On a superficial level, the poem's kind of obvious. It's annoying to hear the insincerity of an automated voice. And as a cliche, the phrase, have a nice day, is hackneyed, overfamiliar, and commonplace. On an emotional level, the machine has been telling me what to do. So it's very manipulative, forcing us into certain actions no matter what we want or understand we need to do. Don't press the wrong button. Most automated cashiers do not take cash, so options may be limited. If it is a self-checkout, it's extra annoying to hear that cliche after I've done all the work. No way to question the result. With a person, you may have had a conversation before or after your transaction. There may have been body language, something to hang your feelings on, or maybe, maybe of pleasure or generosity of spirit. And of course, you've been given the opportunity to reply or not reply with a pleasantry. The poet has used language in the juxtaposition segments to contrast the harshness of the T's and D's in automated with the softer, gentler, cashier, sincere. So, despite the words not quite, there has been a movement towards a gentler position. The use of the ellipsis is important, both for getting a natural pause between the segments, but also for allowing the reader to take a pause to think about their reaction. I like that the words "have a nice day" are in the second line and undistinguished by punctuation of any kind. The "not quite" emphasizes, perhaps sarcastically, the lack of human interaction that might otherwise be possible. Overall, despite my first reaction, I really came to love this poem for opening up my own thoughts to analysis, reflection, and leaving me enough room for possible change. Thank you very much.
Your analysis in the poem were really quite interesting. And maybe the larger supermarkets, we should send the larger supermarkets the poem and your analysis just to give them a clue as to how most of us feel about this. But I have to tell you, Lynn, I actually love the automated cashier at my two local supermarkets. They don't talk to me. They don't tell me off. You know, if something goes wrong, okay, fair enough. I've got to go speak to a human, which is, that's okay. And I'm very excited to tell you, they take cash should you want to use it. So you need to come and move here. Anyway, enough of what you see. Perfect. This poem has really got us talking.
To me, there's so much room in this poem
Mm-hmm.
for interpretation over a longer period of time, or maybe some rereadings. And to me, if haiku doesn't leave that room for you, then it's kind of missed the mark
Yeah.
a bit, in my personal opinion. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And do you have something you could share with us of your own?
I do actually. 20, I compiled from a group of friends and strangers a little book called Moving Meditation, and I had written, there was not that much in it, but it was about Tai Chi mainly, or Qigong,
Oh,
and
okay.
I wrote the uneven ground of my practice, Tai Chi sunrise. The uneven ground of my practice, Tai Chi sunrise.
Oh. I do Tai Chi myself, but generally at the moment it's too cold to be outside. So
Uh,
I do it in my basement with the light on and it's very flat. In the summer I go down to the lake, but it's very, very uneven and it's sort of appropriate because if my Tai Chi teacher is with me, he's prone to telling me off for not doing the little things properly, and
yes,
not.
I do.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you. That's very kind of
Thank
you.
you again. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Having promised you that Matthew Diffibor was going to be here to correct my pronunciation of his surname and, of course, bring you another nomination, we had a disaster. At the last minute, he couldn't make it to the recording. So, Matt, I'm going to be pronouncing your name forever incorrectly. Well, at least until we get together again. But the good news is I have his nomination and I'm going to read it to you.
Mhm.
Household chores, the agitation of the washer. Household chores, the agitation of the washer. By Steve Barr. I love the simplicity of this verse, as well as its structure and subtly varied interpretations. The narrator is agitated by their household chores, while the clothes are being agitated by the agitator, the device that tosses the clothes around in the washing machine. As such, the washer also takes on a dual meaning. It can refer to the washing machine itself or the person operating it. Maybe they're not even using a machine and are forced to do the laundry by hand. Perhaps it's a parent or a maid who's tired of their mundane responsibilities around the house. Or maybe it's a teenager being forced to do the laundry for the first time. The possibilities make the verse easily relatable. The structure of the poem matches the content well. With only 7 words split across 3 lines, it offers a terse description that seems to build with the narrator's frustration. The structure is always important in haiku or senryu. We want to make sure the poem's content dictates the structure instead of vice versa. If there were more words or fewer lines, it's unlikely to have worked. On a deeper level, Steve's poem also offers commentary on the often routine and dull nature of existence. We all have our daily agitations and responsibilities. We sometimes wish we didn't have. Senryu should speak to every intricacy of the human experience, not just the amazing things or the horrible things that happen to us. Focusing on the extremes is a misrepresentation of reality. We should be thankful to Steve and others who are open to writing what's real, no matter how seemingly unremarkable. We should cherish and celebrate every aspect of life. Thank you very much, Matt. And next, I have another treat for you. We have Bona M. Santos coming back as the person who gave us the presentation in the first place to tell us which of the poems took her imagination and why. Bona, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back, Patricia. I have to say, this is my first time to be in this group, so bear with me. I had fun reading all the poems that were submitted, and I actually had fun also categorizing them as ha ha ha, funny ha ha, and eye roll ha ha, and some of them are quite serious too as well. For my choice, I went for Mark Gilbert's Monaco. Drowning in minutes, longing for concrete actions. Drowning in minutes, longing for concrete actions. I chose this poem because it goes within the spirit of Madku as I see it. It is an eye roll way of alleviating that exasperating feeling when you are in a meeting and where people just drone on and on and on, and with well-meaning objectives but hardly any concrete results to show. It is for me written in a light and not overly fraught scenario. The use of monocle also for me is effective since it gives emphasis on the length of time this scenario presents. Both the droning and longing expresses to me the slowness of time. And also I see the play of words in the use of longing. How time really stretches too long in these tedious meetings. The use of drowning is metaphorical in a sense, but it also conveys an emotion of getting overwhelmed. In this case, in this scenario, with the minutiae of, the agenda of a meeting, point by point, when it's being read during presentations like this. I was a bit bothered at first with the use of the ing with the 2 words. But after reading it a number of times, I really had to read this a number of times. It just grew on me. And in the end, it worked out. And I also saw 2 ways of cutting this monocle. One is drowning in minutes, longing for concrete actions. The other one is drowning in minutes, longing for concrete actions. It could be a 3-liner at this point. But in the second instance, for me, concrete actions is the aha moment because at first, when I tried to read it in 3 lines, it seems like it could go the way of the love poem when you go drowning in minutes, longing for what? But then it went for concrete actions, and for me, it went ahead to pivot in a meeting scenario instead. But can concrete actions could be something else too for some other people. And so for these reasons, I voted for it to be my favorite. Thank you.
Thanks, Bona. I do like a monoku that you can cut in various different places. I think that makes it successful. So thank you very much for that. And perhaps if you would do us the honor of closing us out with the poetry with one of your Madku.
I think this is one of those that is, I believe, going to be published in the Poetry P Journal. I think this is the one that is my favorite, and also Patricia's, I believe, during the presentation. Crunch time. I ditched a date with my deadline. Crunch time. I ditched a date with my deadline. Thank you.
Thanks, Bona. Actually, you're right. It was my favorite on the day, but I've switched my allegiance and I went with morning break, the slow walk around the block to simmer down. Morning break, the slow walk around the block to simmer down.
I still do that, by the way.
Don't we all? Thank you so much, Bona. Thank you. And thank you, Lynn, as well. And to all the judges who have sent me in their analyses today. So now I'm going to stop the recording and we're going off to have a fight about who's going to be the judge's choice and who are the honourable mentions. Thank you very much to all the judges, to all the poets, the editing team, and of course you for coming along to listen to the podcast. You might be disappointed not to know which of the poems became the judge's choice and which the honourable mentions, but don't worry, that's all in the journal 524, which will be out imminently. A couple of favours to ask of you. Perhaps if you don't already sponsor the podcast with a membership, you might like to think about it, or perhaps buying us a coffee. You can find out more on Poetry P's website. And another favour you can do for me. Do you think you could leave a nice review on the app you listen to the podcast? Or a comment on YouTube? Or, if you've had a poem featured, tell people about it on your social media. It all helps with the work of the podcast, and I'd be ever so grateful. Thank you very much. Now, if you're listening in real time, the end of October 2024, remember submissions open for Tanker next month. And I've recorded lots of info to help you write and maybe also inspire you in previous podcasts. And I've got another few to come. It was very, very interesting having a look at Tanker. Anyway, links will be in the show notes to the relevant podcasts, especially the one that gives you the criteria for what we'll be looking for. So I'll see you next week. But until then, keep writing. Perhaps you can get cracking on your Tanker. Ciao.